Hello, in this video, we'll cover Genesis chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless, that I may make my covenant between me and you, and may multiply you greatly. God calls himself, I am God Almighty. In Hebrew, this is El Shaddai. El meaning God, and Shaddai referring to God's power. God gives Abram two commands. The first one is walk before me, and the second is be blameless. These two commands were previously seen in the life of Noah. Genesis 6:9 says, Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, Behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. God changes Abram's name to Abraham, and God promises that Abraham will be the father of a multitude of nations. God promises that Abraham will be exceedingly fruitful. This is the same language that is used with Adam as well as Noah when they were told to be fruitful. And God said to Abraham, As for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep, between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and that shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised. Every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring. Both he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall surely be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Circumcision is an outward sign of God's covenant with Abraham. In order for future generations to receive the blessing, Abraham must circumcise himself and all the males in his household. To ensure that the covenant is remembered and passed on to future generations, God requires all males at least 8 days old to be circumcised. This would be a visible reminder to them that God is El Shaddai. In the New Testament, Paul says that it is better that our heart be marked for God than our body. Galatians 6:15 says, For neither circumcision counts for nothing, nor uncircumcision, but a new creation. And God said to Abraham, As for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of people shall come from her. Then Abram fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abram said to God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. God said, No, but Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. God changes Sarai's name to Sarah. Both of these names mean princess. Sarah is 9 to 10 years younger than Abraham. She is 90 years old at this point when God promises that he will give her a son. Isaac's name means he laughs. In verse 19, God says that he will establish his covenant with Isaac. Ishmael receives a blessing of becoming a great nation, but God's everlasting covenant rests on Isaac. The most important aspect of this is that Jesus is a descendant of Isaac. When he had finished talking with him, God went up from Abraham. When Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all those born in his house were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very day, as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very day, Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised, and all the men of his house. Those born in the house and those bought with the money from a foreigner were circumcised with him. Abraham chose to be faithful in obeying the Lord. He circumcises himself, Isaac, and every other male in his household. God's covenant with Abraham is that Abraham will be the father of a multitude of nations. Kings will come from him. Abraham's family will inhabit all the land of Canaan, and God will be their God.